Welcome back to the Sky News Scotland debate live in Edinburgh. And let's go on to what's going to be our final question in this debate. It comes from Aaron Sidebottom. Aaron.
Good morning. Over the last decade, we have witnessed the ever-increasing erosion of our civil liberties. DNA retention, CCTV, ID cards are just some examples in a long list. What will you do to ensure these hard-won freedoms are not eroded any further?
Aaron Sidebottom concerned about the erosion of civil liberties. Alex Salmond.
Well, I share some of Aaron's concerns. I mean, if we take the identity card system proposal that has been made by the Labour government, then I think there were 49 different aspects about people which would be kept on a central database. Now, I don't think a plastic card system with that detail on people's personal lives is any solution to terrorism. I don't think it's any solution to crime. I think the solutions to crime are getting more police in the communities and streets of Scotland, as we're doing. And therefore, there is a huge question as to why it was proposed not only to have this card at a cost of many billions of pounds, but also to have that comprehensive collection of personal data. And that's why we'll oppose it, because it's a waste of money, but it also jeopardises civil liberties.
Jim Murphy.
Aaron, you raise a really important point, and it's about the balance between intrusion by the state and protection of those civil liberties, but also the government helping to keep our country safe. Now, as we do face new challenges and fresh dangers, such as criminals who are more determined, more innovative and more desperate than ever before, I think that, for example, the DNA database is an important change, and I would support it, because as science has evolved and as science has improved, I think that we've managed to detect 800 murders, rapes and manslaughters as a consequence of that DNA database. And as a Member of Parliament, I see it as my responsibility, yes, to protect your civil liberties, but also to use the best science available to catch some of our vilest criminals across this country.
Thank you. David Munday.
Yes, the security of our country is important, but it's a disgrace when you see anti-terrorism laws overseen by the Labour government used to remove somebody who had the temerity to heckle at the Labour Party conference. And that's the sort of society that we're moving towards with the ever more draconian measures that Labour have tried to bring forward, including 90 days and then 42 days detention. We don't support ID cards. We don't believe that they offer value or security and are an intrusion into civil liberty.
Thank you. Alistair Carmichael.
Remember why it is our troops are engaged in a conflict in Afghanistan. It's about values. And the values that we have as a country, freedom of speech, freedom of the individual, are better than the values of the terrorists in Al-Qaeda, who have no respect for that. But when we erode these freedoms for ourselves, we do the terrorists' job for them. And I think of times without number that we're told we need to have this to protect our security. And then what happens? It's used to prosecute somebody like Maya Ann Evans, who read the names of dead soldiers killed in Iraq at the cenotaph. That's why this government is not to be trusted with our freedoms.
Alistair, you make important points about freedom, but in this DNA databasing, I think it's important to protect the freedom of people to go about their business safe, protected, and knowing that the government does everything it possibly can, which is why the DNA database is something that I personally support. The Labour government supports as well. It's essential that we use the best technology to ensure that people know, and families in Scotland and across the UK know, that the government is doing everything it possibly could within the confines of protection of freedom and using the best technology to detect those rapists and murderers. And I think the DNA database is an important part of doing just that.
But Jim, we have a separate database system in Scotland which is much less draconian than yours and works effectively. We've seen here...
Well, David, I am Scottish.
Yeah, I know you are. I know you are. You've told us several times,
David, the point is, I want us to go further. When it came to this debate in the House of Commons, the Conservatives took a different view.
Yes.
I want us to go further in the DNA databasing, because it has helped detect 800 of our most violent, disturbing criminals. And I think it's important the government uses every opportunity we can to use that technology. And I'm just disappointed that you're not serious about the use of this DNA database.
We argued for the Scottish system, which achieves a much better balance.
Okay, Alex Salmond.
I think you're wrong, Jim, to suggest in any way that the use of the database decided by the Scottish Parliament by a large majority is in any way ineffective. It's perfectly effective, but it doesn't infringe civil liberties by keeping automatically the DNA of innocent people, which is what people are worried about. And I notice you didn't address the questions or the problems that were identified, and that's the clear abuse of anti-terrorism legislation. It has been abused by your government, and therefore it's understandable, given that record of abuse of anti-terrorism legislation, why people look at the ID card proposal and these 49 different aspects of people's character and are very, very suspicious indeed. If you want people to believe in security measures, then don't abuse the ones you've already got.
The problem with the Labour government, the problem with this Labour government for the last 13 years has been a pretty simple one. They don't trust the people, so they want to gather as much data about us as possible, and then they don't respect us, so they go and lose it. Time after time. And, I mean, what we have, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a DNA database, I've never said that. But what we have in Scotland is a meaningful, useful, workable one. And I don't need any lectures from you about this, Jim. When you were still in the National Union of Students, I was working as a Procurator Fiscal Deputy in Aberdeen, prosecuting criminals, working with police at the sharp end. And let me tell you, there is few things that will annoy police officers and prosecutors more than politicians, professional politicians, trying to make cheap politics out of an issue like this by just throwing away cheap sound bites.
Well, Alistair, you put eight cheap sound bites in a row there and put it in, construct it as an argument. The fact is
there's nothing
that we
cheap
have,
about your
Alistair,
policies.
we have the ability and the innovation in this DNA databasing to go further. And I'm just very clear, and the Labour Party is very clear, that when we have this ability and we have this know-how, we should deploy it. Because faced with criminals who are more imaginative, more innovative, using the best of the technologies that can be put in the hands of people who have evil intent, it is our responsibility as a government to do everything we can to keep the population safe, which is why we will support this extension on DNA databasing.
Yeah, well, Alistair's right.
Alex Salmond.
Alistair's right that, Jim, your proposals aren't cheap. Even the remnants of the ID card system will cost £5 billion. Now, given the enormity of the financial pressures and the economic difficulties of this country, how on earth can you justify £5 billion of expenditure on an ID card system which won't improve safety but causes such concern for civil liberties?
And, you know, the weakness of the government's position is it's shown in the fact